Imagine entering a revival session anticipating prayer and worship, only to see more than $300 raised in what seemed like a split second. There were no lengthy campaigns or fundraisers, just a powerful, selfless, and faith-filled moment that astounded the audience. Standing next to Prophet Joshua Giles, Pastor John Hannah accomplished what many churches strive for months or even years. However, how did it actually occur? What does this moment tell us about the modern church, ministry, and money? There's much more to this story than simply the money, so stay tuned. Why would a whole audience pull out their wallets so fast that hundreds of thousands of dollars were raised in a matter of minutes? Did the sermon, the atmosphere, or the prophetic energy in the room have a role? Or was it more profound? Something that exposed the ministry's amazing power as well as the escalating financial scandal. When Prophet Joshua Giles and Pastor John Hannah joined together for the Mantle Revival pop-up, this is precisely what transpired. Astonished, thrilled, and even perplexed, Pastor Hannah raised an incredible $300. More quickly than most churches could ever hope to. We will dissect everything in this video. We'll start by showing you inside the Mantle Revival pop-up, why the atmosphere was charged before the offering was even taken, what the occasion was about, and who was present. Next, we'll examine the methods, the faith appeal, and the audience reaction that allowed Pastor John Hannah to raise such a significant sum so rapidly. This is where things start to get interesting, though. We'll explore the responses as well. While some are hailing this as a religious miracle, others are labeling it contentious and deceitful. What actually took place in the background, and how does this relate to the flow of funds in contemporary ministry? Some of the inside information about this event that has since surfaced will surprise you. Thus, stay with me through to the very finish, since there is much more to this story than just one offering. It calls into question the future of revival culture and the impact of leadership. You must first comprehend the culture of the Mantle Revival pop-up and its leaders in order to comprehend how Pastor John Hannah managed to raise $300 in what seemed like an instant. There was more than one church service at the Mantle Revival pop-up. It wasn't your average Sunday morning get-together where guests come half awake, make their way to their seats, and look at their timepieces. This was not like the others. Prophet Joshua Giles, a young but rising prophetic voice, known for his fiery revival meetings, audacious prophecies, and capacity to attract hungry crowds of believers, will host the event, which was advertised and expected to be a powerful once-in-a-season event. In prophetic circles, Joshua Giles is well known for his teachings on spiritual empowerment, destiny, and mantles. Giles has positioned himself as a revivalist of the new generation. Many Christians are in dire need of new anointing, spiritual acceleration, and a revitalized sense of purpose, and his Mantle Revival brand feeds that desire. People come to his gatherings for more than simply the preaching and music. They anticipate breakthroughs, impartation, and a transformative experience with God. Now add Pastor John Hannah's presence to that ambiance. John Hannah is not your typical preacher. For those who are unaware, he is in charge of a huge congregation in Chicago that has tens of thousands of members, making him one of the most powerful church leaders in America. He is renowned for his captivating speaking style, his capacity to inspire faith, and his talent for fostering worship experiences that will never be forgotten. He is a mobilizer as well as a preacher. People listen to Hannah when she speaks. Imagine this then, a crowded gathering full of Christians who are already preparing for a revival. There is a lot of intensity in the music. People are being pushed into profound moments of surrender by the worship team, and the anticipation in the audience is already palpable. People came anticipating breakthroughs, prophecies, and miracles. They arrived prepared to sow, to receive, and to take part in a momentous occasion. The mood was electrifying by the time Pastor John Hanna took the stage. They were crying, praying, adoring, and yelling. And the secret is this: a place filled with that amount of spiritual and emotional energy is ripe for incredible things to occur. Raising money wasn't the only goal here. The goal was to harness the fervor of a crowd that came with higher expectations. That's when it occurred. When Pastor Hanna seized the microphone, the room changed from a place of worship to one of the most dazzling and quick fundraising events that attendees had ever witnessed. Let's examine the precise tactics and spiritual appeals that sparked such a powerful response before delving into the specifics of how he raised that amount of money so rapidly. Because the plot takes a surprising turn at this point, the energy in the audience changed as soon as Pastor John Hanna took the stage at the Mantle Revival pop-up. It seemed as though every eye in the room was drawn to him, and those who had been worshiping passionately immediately became intently concentrated. However, there was more than just the presence of a strong preacher that set this offering apart from others. It was the way Hanna interacted with the audience, the way he presented offering, and the way he capitalized on their desire for a breakthrough. Think about the setup first. Joshua Giles had spent a great deal of time spiritually preparing the crowd before the offering. He discussed divine acceleration, spiritual authority, and mantles. God frequently works via acts of faith, kindness, and stitching, he told the audience. The people's faith was already elevated by the time Hanna took the microphone. Words weren't all they were hearing. They were reacting to what they thought God intended to do in that space. Then, Pastor Hanna himself arrived. Although he used a deliberate strategy, he delivered it with such genuineness that it didn't seem predetermined. He didn't demand money or put pressure on the crowd. Rather, he invoked their religious beliefs. He discussed the potential of stitching seeds as a spiritual investment rather than a business deal. He talked about breakthroughs, reminded people of God's promises, and presented the event as a chance for everyone to take part in something truly remarkable. The timing was also very important. Hanna took some time to solicit funds. He created suspense. Excitement and expectancy were raised as he related personal accounts of God's provision, testimony of previous miracles, and prophetic encouragement. The energy had reached a tipping point by the time he called on the audience to contribute. Money was not on anyone's mind. They were considering taking part in what they considered to be a holy moment. The giving itself followed. This was quick and lively, in contrast to typical offerings where baskets are given around or ushers move slowly along the aisles. Through a variety of platforms, including fast access kiosks, mobile apps, and online donations, attendees were encouraged to make an instant donation. People were able to react to the spiritual momentum in the room almost instinctively because the logistics were flawless. Hanna was skilled not only at preaching but also at relating to the audience on a human level. He would look around, meet people's eyes, and address them immediately. Giving became quite personal during those times, a reaction to faith and a close experience with God. Individuals thought they were doing more than merely helping with an event. The outcomes were astounding, and they were a part of a heavenly act, a miracle in motion. More than $300,000 was raised in what felt like a matter of minutes. For comparison, many missions or churches may strive for months to reach even a small portion of that number. However, in this case, it occurred at a speed that attendees characterized as shattering records, leaving many both impressed and shocked. Even though the fundraising speed and scope were astounding, It also raised concerns and caused controversy. How could so much money be raised in such a short period of time? Did participants know exactly how the money will be used? While some praised it as a remarkable act of faith, others contended that the size and speed of the donations raised questions about transparency. What caused the fusion of spiritual energy, charm, and preparedness made the event even more captivating. Persuasion and logistics weren't the only factors involved. It aimed to appeal to a deeply ingrained conviction that donating is a spiritual act that seeks God's blessing rather than merely being a transaction. People replied because they felt that their donation was linked to a spiritual purpose, not because they were forced to. This is where things become even more intriguing, though. Insider information and responses that illuminated the dynamics of the record-breaking offering started to surface in the days after the occurrence. Additionally, some of the revelations caused controversy on Christian news sites and social media, challenging both believers and skeptics. Reactions were quick, intense, and sharply divided as word spread about the $300,000 raised in record time. Attendees characterized the event as exciting, magical, and even transformative. Videos of Joshua Giles urging the audience, Pastor John Hanna preaching, and people holding up their phones to record the historic offering in real time went viral on social media. People gave moving testimony about how the atmosphere in the room affected them personally, not just spiritually, but also emotionally and physically. Supporters and admirers hailed the event as a contemporary miracle. Many people said on the internet that they had never seen anything similar during a church service or revival. Comment sections were swamped with terms like unbelievable, record-breaking, and divine provision as viewers attempted to convey the enormity of what they had just witnessed. Some even likened it to well-known faith-based offerings throughout history, implying that this pop-up revival would establish a new benchmark for live giving in the contemporary church. However, disagreement soon followed, as it always does when a moment of this size occurs. Some argued that earning $300,000 in just a few minutes may put undue pressure on attendance, while others questioned the pace and scope of the gifts. They questioned whether spontaneous giving was encouraged by the moment's momentum or whether participants fully comprehended the fund's intended use. These arguments quickly spread to blogs, internet forums, and even mainstream Christian news sources, igniting a larger conversation about stewardship, transparency, and the morality of quick fundraising in ministry settings. Both sides of the story were covered by the media. The incredible amount raised was reported by local news outlets, which frequently presented it as an uplifting tale of faith in action. Christian watchdog bloggers and commentators, on the other hand, adopted a more critical stance, questioning whether this type of rapid giving is consistent with biblical teachings and looking into the strategies employed to solicit donations. The celebration and criticism only served to increase interest in the mantle revival phenomenon, making it a popular topic on social media. Reactions from the audience were likewise very intimate. Numerous participants gave accounts of their transformations. Donors reported experiencing a spiritual awakening, receiving heavenly favor, or having their prayers answered. Others claimed that the experience had deepened their faith and given them the courage to put their faith in God while making decisions related to their finances, relationships, or spirituality. On the other hand, a tiny percentage of participants later acknowledged that they felt uneasy about the pressure and pace of the giving moment, questioning if it was right to raise such a big amount so rapidly. These complex answers show how a single occurrence can evoke a wide range of reactions, each influenced by personal spiritual experiences, expectations, and beliefs. A major factor in the moment's amplification was social media. Almost instantly, videos of Pastor Hannah's address, the fervent audience, and the quick stream of donations went viral. Within hours, YouTube videos, TikTok videos, and Instagram Reels received tens of thousands of views. In the internet Christian community, hashtags pertaining to record-breaking offerings, Joshua Giles, John Hannah, and Mantle Revival started to gain popularity. Discussions regarding the ramifications of this incident were further fueled by the viewpoints of pastors, influencers, and Christian content producers. Even well-known Christian leaders and celebrities had something to say. Some commend the act of generosity and faith, pointing out that it encourages people to donate beyond their comfort zones and witness God's provision in action. Others, however, raised concerns about the possibility of abuse or misinterpretation, stressing the necessity of transparency and responsibility when managing such substantial quantities of money in a religious setting. In the end, the responses, both favorable and unfavorable, showcase the event's enduring influence. It was more than just a fundraising event. Within the Christian community, it turned into a cultural hotspot that sparked conversations about faith, money, transparency, and the workings of contemporary revival movements. Weeks later, people are still discussing it and discussing its implications for the future of pop-up shops, quick offerings, and the ability of charismatic leaders to raise significant sums of money. The bit that gets folks talking is this. Although the $300,000 raised is the main story in the news, experts suggest that most people are still unaware of even more information regarding the tactics, relationships, and spiritual dynamics that go on behind the scenes. These discoveries have the potential to alter our perceptions of both this incident and the expanding phenomenon of high-impact, high-energy revival movements. Although the public witnessed an amazing performance and a riveting audience, the backstage activities provide additional layers of context that were previously unclear to many. We must examine planning, strategy, and the various spiritual procedures used in order to completely understand how Pastor John Hannah and Prophet Joshua Giles planned such a quick $300,000 giving event. According to event insiders, weeks of preparation were required to make sure the setting would optimize response and interaction for the Mantle Revival pop-up. This was not an impromptu appeal for funds. It was a component of a larger plan to harmonize practical donations with spiritual expectations. Setting the scene both practically and figuratively was a major concern for the organizers. Every element, including the lighting, music, seating arrangements, and digital giving platforms, was planned to make sure that when the crowd's trust reached its highest point, donations could be made instantly, easily, and without hesitation. Having spent decades in ministry, Pastor John Hannah is renowned for his ability to read a room. Before taking the microphone, he meticulously assessed the energy of the audience according to sources and modified his tone, tempo, and delivery to fit the mood of the audience. He requested more than simply money. He urged personal testimony, talked prophetically, and invoked faith. He sparked a moment where giving money became entwined with worship and expressing faith by connecting it to spiritual breakthrough and heavenly blessing. Meanwhile, Prophet Joshua Giles was instrumental in spiritually preparing those in attendance. Messages like divine acceleration, destiny, and mantles had prepared the attendees. Hannah's cry to contribute was delicately put in motion by Giles, who underlined that God frequently works via acts of trust and obedience. Hannah's pastoral influence and Giles's prophetic authority combined to form the ideal storm, a crowd prepared to react on an emotional and spiritual level. However, despite the strategy's impressiveness, they caused debate. The high-energy environment and quick requests for substantial cash, according to critics, could make it difficult to distinguish between inspiration and manipulation. Debates on social media surfaced very immediately. Some contended that participants may have been under conscious or unconscious pressure to donate more than they could afford. Others questioned whether the spiritual framing of giving, which directly links donations to breakthroughs or blessings, runs the risk of fostering transactional faith, in which donors donate in the hopes of receiving instant personal benefit. However, proponents rebutted these critiques by highlighting the openness of the event and the voluntary nature of the donation. They maintained that the event was a valid manifestation of religion led by leaders who sincerely think that donating brings about spiritual blessings. Thousands more guests left without making a donation, as many noted, underscoring the fact that the decision was made voluntarily and out of faith rather than under duress. There were also logistical wonders behind the scenes. In order to facilitate real-time contributions without any delays, the organizers employed a variety of donation channels, including mobile apps and on-site kiosks. To ensure that anyone who was ready to contribute could do so right away, volunteers were placed in strategic locations to support and uplift attendance. The conversion of spiritual energy into financially unprecedented outcomes was made possible by the quick deployment of both personnel and technology. Personal encounters add another level of behind-the-scenes knowledge. Participants saw that Hannah established personal connections by identifying individuals, calling them out, addressing them by name, and offering succinct prophecies. People felt seen, acknowledged, and spiritually uplifted by this personal contact, elements that boost giving in any situation. In actuality, what seemed to outsiders to be a vast, nearly robotic fundraising endeavor was very relational and emotionally engaging. The dispute went beyond the actual occurrence. Christian commentators questioned stewardship, accountability, and the Church's financial teaching as they discussed the morality of quick fundraising in revival contexts. While such events create excitement and money, critics cautioned that they also need to guarantee long-term integrity and openness. Advocates praised the occasion as a demonstration of faith, trust, and God's power acting through obedient hearts. In the end, a behind-the-scenes tale demonstrates the fine line that separates financial strategy from spiritual energy. It demonstrates how charm, preparation, and the skill of relating to an audience can transform a modest offering into an unforgettable event. It also calls into doubt the future. As high-energy giving events become more prevalent in revival movements, how will churches, leaders, and participants reconcile religion, money, and openness? This is where it becomes even more fascinating. There were other creative strategies used at the pop-up, according to insiders. Some information has not yet been made public, including donor experiences, prophetic moments, and even upcoming partnerships. People's perceptions of the contemporary revival movement and the function of charismatic leadership in inspiring widespread financial and spiritual participation may be altered by these behind-the-scenes components. Pastor John Hannah's quick $300,000 raise at the Joshua Giles Mantle Revival pop-up is more than simply a story. It is a mirror of broader patterns influencing revival culture and contemporary ministry. Long speeches, slow offerings, and lengthy altar calls were the norm at revival gatherings for many years. However, this incident marks a change toward intense, quick-paced spiritual experiences that blend worship, prophetic authority, and immediate reaction systems. The growing significance of technology in ministry is one significant implication. Attendees were able to react without hesitation thanks to mobile donating apps, real-time digital donations, and instant web platforms. Giving during a revival has changed as a result of this combination of technology and faith. Offerings are no longer limited by passing baskets or envelopes. These days, spiritual momentum can be instantly converted into observable outcomes thanks to digital instruments. This is a great opportunity as well as a responsibility for ministry leaders. There has never been a greater need for responsibility, openness, and proper stewardship. The increasing influence of personality-driven ministry is another aspect. Leaders like Prophet Joshua Giles and Pastor John Hanna are influencing revival culture by fusing charismatic personality with spiritual authority. Their capacity to inspire faith, rally audiences, and produce record-breaking moments of giving demonstrates that contemporary revival is more than merely theological. It has to do with emotional connection, leadership credibility, and relational influence. As a result of these trends, churches and ministries are placing a greater emphasis on crowd dynamics, prophetic engagement, training, and communication in addition to traditional pastoral abilities. Additionally, the pop-up showcases a novel method of experiencing outreach. Attendees did more than observe. They took part in what felt like a historic, transformative, and collective moment. A larger trend toward immersive spiritual experiences is reflected in this participatory approach, where faith is demonstrated via deeds, charitable contributions, and intimate involvement. These days, revivals are not passive. They increase both spiritual and practical results by requiring engagement, attentiveness, and instantaneous participation. There are hazards and difficulties, of course. High-intensity giving moments, according to critics, might lead to pressure, obfuscate moral lines, or prioritize material involvement above spiritual development. Leaders have to walk a tightrope between encouraging charity and unintentionally encouraging transactional religion. To maintain trust and integrity in this changing ministry paradigm, transparency in the use of funds, unambiguous communication about results, and accountability mechanisms are crucial. However, the significant impact cannot be denied in spite of the complaints. The Mantle Revival pop-up was more than just a business deal for those who attended. It was an encounter with faith. Individuals described experiencing supernatural support, spiritual inspiration, and a revitalized sense of purpose. The quick, tremendous gift became a concrete manifestation of faith in God's provision and the transforming influence of group faith. The lessons learned from this incident will probably continue to shape revival culture for years to come. Churches may incorporate digital donation platforms, train leaders in high-engagement ministry strategies, and embrace pop-up revival models more frequently. Other ministries are taking note of how effective the mix of worship, prophecy, leadership presence, and quick reaction systems has been. In conclusion, there is more to the $300,000 that Pastor John Hanna raised at Joshua Giles's Mantle Revival pop-up than just the cash. It's about a new revival culture where community, technology, leadership, and faith come together to produce remarkable spiritual and useful effects. This occasion questions established ministry paradigms, encourages creativity, and serves as a reminder to the Christian community that revival is vibrant, dynamic, and changing in fascinating and thought-provoking ways.